So for this, we're going to spend a little bit of time as a platform, just presenting back how we see AI sort of evolving in ways of working platforms, essentially in our kind of the platform we provide. Then I'm just going to talk a bit about, well, if you're trying to build AI within your organization, what are all the different components that you need to think about in order to try and build that capability within the organization. And then just time at the end, just questions and answers that you may have. And again, nature of GRIDtalk Live is it's about kind of interactions and getting your feedback on it. I'm just going to take a drink of water because it's already quite hot. There we go. So like I said, about a couple of months ago, we were starting to think about AI, and for all that use the platform, we've already kind of added AI into the platform. We build playbooks connected to a language model, automatically builds content, so to rapidly help you codify and deploy ways of working. But that's very much the way that we were looking at it is, well, that's just really us building features and adding them to our platform. And I think the reflection point we had is, look, I think most people access AI through platforms at the moment. Now, I think everyone's got access to Copilot, or they'll probably not declare it, they've still got GPT. So there's kind of a natural bit of you just accessing access to language models and chat and interact with them. But most of your access to AI is normally driven now through platforms. You'll use MethodGrid, you might use NPlan, you might use other systems. They will all kind of have a haberdashery of different features that are helping you do something within that platform faster. And the kind of next shift is, whilst they're kind of just adding features, a lot of the platform providers are sort of saying, oh, how are we going to make our systems more intelligent? How could we add AI to the data that persists in our system so that it can do smarter things? It can connect that data source and that data source and provide recommendations and be used. But in that context, that intelligent work system, it is bound by its system boundary. So it's not going out to other systems, it's just, better AI, more integrated AI within a platform bound by the data that it has access to. And I think that's probably, some are further ahead, some are sort of a little bit behind, but that's probably, for us, we feel that's where most systems are trying to evolve to. Really good AI features built within their platform, but bound by the data that it has access to. Now, we think, and it won't be you're on a kind of linear journey. Some will move faster and some will go further forward. But the next kind of bit, which I think what clients want, is actually, I want to build an AI solution that isn't limited by its system boundary. I want to build an agent that can talk to MethodGrid. I want an agent that can talk to ACC, Bentley. I want a system that can talk to NPlan. And I don't want it to be limited just because it's built in one system. And it's kind of, how do I get AI to be more a decisioning system, but connected to different processes, different systems?
Yeah, I think if I can just jump in, I know this is something we're going to go into more detail in. And the key point is about ownership, right? Because you as an organization, you own your data. And I think the next step to that is owning the AI system that is talking to all these different platforms, rather than, MethodGrid, as you say, we have access to the data you've given MethodGrid. Well, maybe there's some data that you have that isn't part of MethodGrid, but you want your AI to have access to when you're using it to build things within MethodGrid. And the same true for every platform you use. You want to bring your own AI system and all of the data it has access to into all of these different platforms you're using. Yeah. Now, manually giving each of those platforms all of that data isn't necessarily something you're going to want to do, or the platform might not even allow you to do that. So I think the key point is about ownership of the data and of the AI system that you're using in all of these different platforms.
And this is the title of the white paper, it was, well, actually, how do you transition from AI as a feature to the right-hand side, which is AI as a role? And that's quite a significant shift. But it's not like everything will become a role. There'll still be stuff in some systems that you're just really happy with it being a feature. But actually what will happen is we will start to see and take more ownership of an AI workforce that's doing things in our behalf. But as Marc said, I want control of that workforce. I don't really want it to be a haberdashery of features or different systems or different agents that I have no control over. So for us, what we kind of predict, and it's probably happening, is clients are going to want to take more ownership of AI and how they build it and the infrastructure they put around it. Now for us, as a platform provider, that means that we will have to think about, well, what are the boundaries that Method Grid would need to open up in terms of allowing. Actually, it's not about us building the Method Grid agent, it's about us opening the platform up to the agents that you choose. It might be Copilot, it might be something you build in-house, but if it can't talk to Method Grid and it can't interact with Method Grid and do something with it, then that's a boundary for you to be able to use the platform. And I think that's the key bit around the first bit about how do you let agents actually work with your platform. And then the other one, Marc, was kind of the data access as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, it's a huge part of any, I mean, using any system really, but especially with AI, everyone's obviously concerned, rightly concerned about where is your data going? What is the AI doing with your data? Is it being used to train your data? Can that data leak, you know, anywhere when other people are using the same AI system? So if you have control over your AI and you know exactly what data it has access to and no one else is using that same AI, that's something you can control. You can feel a lot more confident about what the AI is doing in all of these different platforms because it's your AI. It's running on, you know, your servers or the infrastructure that you've set up, rather than, as is currently the case, you know, whatever infrastructure the platform happens to have. Now, obviously, with Method Grid, we put a lot of time and effort into making sure all the infrastructure we do use is secure, all the reassurance that our clients need about what it's doing with their data. But having to go through that process, that kind of data security process of every single platform you're using and having to trust what they're doing with your data is a difficult task. And if you own the AI, you own what the AI is doing with your data.
Yeah,
obviously a much better place to be.
When we were kind of exploring it, Paul, we were talking to your AI guys at RLB, and we were like, we're not sure that you're going to be happy with us if we're connecting to Method Grid to OpenAI. We use OpenAI in Azure. That's the gateway that we access the language model. But I was like, in a world where you want to take more ownership of AI, it's highly likely that you're going to turn around to us and say, we want to plug Method Grid into our hosted instance of our language model because that's the one that we've trained and it's got access to our data. Again, it's a shift from where platforms have led the way to now platforms rethinking and go, well, actually, great. You can plug Method Grid into any language model and it will respond and you can host it and you can own it. Because there is we were simulating ideas about what happens when, well, I've got one platform talking to OpenAI, I've got one platform that's talking to Gemini, I've got one talking to some other one in China. It's like, hang on, I've got a haberdashery of models I have no control over. And even when we do upgrades to our language model, like we'll move Method Grid from 3.5 to 4 and different models, their behavior and performance dynamically changes. And we were like, well, if I've got no control over which model I'm using, one system changes their model and upgrades it, and it can completely change the interactions that I might connect with mine. And it was like, that's the kind of haberdashery that I don't think clients are really going to want to. It's okay if you just view it as that's just a standalone feature. I can exist with that, just a purpose, nice closed boundary, that's fine. But when it comes to building intelligent decision systems, that's much more that you'll need to build that and take ownership of that, because it won't be that you will allow different language models you don't really have that much control over, and it certainly will be that you will want it connected to your data in order to drive kind of decisioning and making.
Yeah, I think as well, I think that's a good point with the, as we upgrade the models, we change what models our system's using. I think, if you've used AI for any amount of time, you'll know there's a skill to using an AI model. You know what prompts you can give it to get a certain response. And there's a lot of trial and error involved in that. And over time, you kind of build up a sort of intuition or rapport with the model almost, where okay, if I ask it to do something in this certain way, it's going to give me that response. Whereas if you go to a different AI model, even if it's just as capable, it's going to respond to the same prompt in a slightly different way. And if you don't know which AI model you're actually talking to kind of under the hood of these different platforms, and then they suddenly change it, all of that kind of intuition about how it's going to behave, you've suddenly lost, because suddenly you're talking to a different model and you don't necessarily know that. But if you own the model, you have a lot more control over how it's going to respond in different situations. The intuition you've built up about how it's going to respond to prompts, you can take with you to all the different platforms.
And I think this is the bit. So for us, it's like we're happy building features, and we'll show you some today. That's kind of part of the thing. But what we want to ensure over the next sort of 6 months, 12 months, is that we're sort of making sure that we're going to support you on that journey to help you build AI roles by making MethodGrid part of that solution and not putting in boundaries that would stop you integrating Copilot in terms of doing things within MethodGrid, accessing data within MethodGrid as well. So that's the key bit, and also give you the freedom to plug it into the language model that you've chosen for your organization, or the language model you've picked for that particular type of scenario. Okay? So we then kind of moved on, and we were like, okay, well, what is MethodGrid going to do and play a role in the kind of new way of working? And we were like, well, what are the things that companies or organizations are going to have to try and put in place to support that shift from AI as a feature to kind of AI as a role? And we'll go around, we'll start at the top and move around clockwise. But the first one was the process engine. And it's not like decision blocks. It was something that we need something that is going to help facilitate the left to right of how we're going to deliver projects. Like, what are the deliverables, stage gates, activities, controls that are all required? But in order, at its basics point, it's helping humans interact and work out what the best destination of travel is to deliver that project. But it's also going to help ground AI in understanding, well, what is the delivery process that I'm now involved in? Because if I'm going to start making recommendations about changes to ways of working, I kind of need to understand what they are and what activities have been done, what stage gate am I coming up to. If I'm going to be an intelligent agent, I'm going to need something that provides that level of kind of anchor on what the process is. But also, Marc, we did a little bit of trial with Network Rail on, we think work will become much more dynamic with the use of AI. It won't be like I've got a static process, we follow these stages, we follow these gates. I think in reality, when AI will evolve, it'll become much more dynamic. It will be, like Network Rail's case, some projects can be 2 stages, some projects can be 4 stages, but I'm manually changing like the playbook to reflect it. We think AI will basically provide you a much more dynamic way of building ways of working. Ask you questions about the project and then build the playbook dynamically for you based on your standards, based on your ways of working. So for us, when we think about the process engine, we think MethodGrid would be a good solution for that and facilitate the conversation between the humans, how we're delivering this project, but also allowing AI to support and help people visualize that left to right and interact with people based on the context of where they are in the process.
Yeah, I think as well, what you've just said, that's almost sort of the premise of MethodGrid, right? Even without the AI, it's about the the kind of balance between the structure and the consistency versus recognizing that individual projects are going to have different requirements. And I think AI really helps finding that balance between getting you from the structure to recognizing the individual characteristics of the specific project. Right.
I think if AI hasn't got anything to attach itself or kind of intelligence about the project, what's next, what the stages are, what evidence has been completed, what evidence has been provided, it will limit its intelligence in about how it can spot things, push recommendations forward, and advise you on what the best path is going forward.
Yeah, like if you use an AI and say, can you plan a project, and you give it all the parameters of a specific project, it might come up with something very good, but then the next project you work on, if you do the same thing from scratch, again, it might be very good, but it might be almost no resemblance whatsoever in terms of structure, in terms of consistency to the first one.
Yep.
I think that's the thing. You want to use the AI's intelligence to help you adapt to specific situations, but you want to ground it in some sort of consistent structure to begin with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the phrase we came up, I think like static solutions, like writing it down, PDF, like your ways of working, I think they're just not going to survive in a kind of AI-enabled world. Just static won't. It'll become much more dynamic. As potentially you'll detect something about something happening. AI might say, actually, we need to add additional deliverables and activities here at this point, at this stage. And it's kind of, if it's static, it's going to be really difficult to help communicate that with teams. But it's just allowing AI to take more of a positive role in dynamically changing how you work.
Yeah, and I think this relates to, I know we've talked a lot about kind of AI-enabled lessons learned. If you have your base like master playbook, and the AI detects, well, every single time you deploy this playbook, you end up making this exact same change. How can we feed that back into the initial structure? How can we update based on the things you always end up doing? That's the sort of thing AI can kind of pick out those patterns and detect.
Yeah.
How do these different projects, what are the similarities, what are the differences?
One of the scenarios we did for Network Rail was when we clone playbooks in the platform, I think we gave it a bit of context, a few questions about, well, look, I'm doing this type of project, I'm doing it in this location. And what we were testing was, could AI look at the playbook and add in elements that were relevant to it based off kind of standards and knowledge?
Yeah, so I think some of the examples we're using, this one's in central London, this one's in the Scottish Highlands,
Yep.
What are the different risks in each of these projects? What are the things that need to be considered? What extra checks do we need on the project?
Yeah.
Things like that, yeah.
I think that's probably, SSE is a really good example. When you're building a wind farm in Ireland versus the UK or in Scotland, there are kind of different people that you need to kind of interact with. And it's kind of, well, I can build that, I can write that all down, but actually if I can just tell AI, and AI can then dynamically adjust the playbook that's relevant, it'd be great. This is all the standards, all the things that you need to worry about. That massively simplifies how you deal with variation in ways of working, but also leveraging it rather than, this is going to take us ages to work through. It's just using AI to quickly prompt you and say, well, you need to work with this fisheries agent. I've added that to the playbook. So I think that's the process engine. Then we get to, I think what it's kind of every word on AI is agent this, agent that. But yeah, there will be a collection, kind of the intelligent agent is, how do you go about building agents that are going to assist teams and people in delivering capital projects? We don't think I don't think there'll just be like one agent that rules the world. I think what this will be is working through it and trying to think through agents logically. What do they do? What's their boundary? And how do those agents actually interact with each other? But how do they also interact with the human? And we were sort of exploring it as well. It's kind of like the point I brought back before about if you've got multiple agents in different systems, for a human it's going to become a bit disorientating that NPlan pops up and does this, method grid pops up and does this, Copilot pops up and does this. And what we're kind of nervous about with agents is actually if we don't think about the kind of human interface, about how they interact with AI, and if it's kind of you've got multiple different interfaces, that's going to disorientate people in ways of work. It's not going to be, especially if they don't talk to each other, you'll be like, oh Christ, thanks M-Plan, and you swear at it, and then you'll be like, oh method grid, can you do that? Oh no, you can't do that, and then it's kind of, it'll just frustrate them. So again, thinking about intelligent agents is, I think, what's their purpose, what's their role, what data are they going to need to be connected to in order to make decisions, but also what interactions do they need to have with each other as well.
Yeah, I think the interaction is a key point, because I think, what we tend to find when we're trying to build AI agents is the more specific the task you give them, the better they are at it.
Yep.
And it's better to have multiple agents that do one task each rather than one agent that's trying to do too much. The issue you then get into is exactly what you've just said. Does that mean I have 10 different interfaces I have to go to if I want to talk to them? I think we're about to talk about how do we orchestrate all of this.
Yes. But I think what was interesting on this point, and I'm not talking about the agents that you'll kind of see on TikTok that people will build on some of the open platforms. This will be, look, we view these agents as how we differentiate ourselves. It's kind of, if we are most organized people in this room are kind of what I class as the project factories. Like, we just deliver projects. That's our kind of our value chain. It's kind of, those agents are probably going to be something that differentiates how you deliver and how effective, how in terms of cost, efficiency, and quality. So we think it will be that clients will want to own how they construct and how they build those agents. And to the point we were like, well, we've got to ensure that our platform can help and be part of that conversation in terms of, show me what, Copilot, go and do X, Y, and Z in method grid. Tell me what, go and nudge everyone that's late on providing evidence for assurance. I don't want to go and have that conversation twice. Or Copilot, I don't know how to speak to method grid. It'll be like, no, I've chatted, I've interacted, everything's taken care of. Yeah, the Marc, then the orchestration logic piece. I think that's probably what's going to, as you kind of build agents, it's going to be like it's the kind of central nervous system of how they interact with each other, how they're triggered by different agents, different triggers from data, different interactions with the human that they have. But how are you going to manage and orchestrate that? And it'll start small. We won't be able to build like intelligent agents that quick. We're going to have to learn how they behave, integrate their kind of intelligence. Oh, actually, we need that agent now to talk to that agent, but how do we facilitate the comms and interactions and the triggers between the two? We're then sort of in that kind of integration and data fabric.
I think as well, just to touch on the orchestration thing, there's a whole kind of technical specification that's kind of being built around this idea of AI agents. Anyone who's kind of looked into this, you've probably seen the phrase MCP used, Model Context Protocol, which it was originally developed by Anthropic, who the company who make the Claude LLM, and then sort of Google and Microsoft have started adopting it as well. And it's sort of a technical specification for how do AI agents talk to each other. How can we develop a standard way for them to talk to each other so that we can all start building these AI agents. And instead of having to awkwardly figure out how these agents talk to each other, there's a standard way that we're all going to tell. We as Method Grid, we can advertise in a standard way. This is the capabilities of Method Grid. This is what the Method Grid AI can give you. This is what you can ask it to do. And then whether it's Copilot, it's Claude, it's ChatGPT, whatever, all of these different AIs will know how to talk to each other. So there's a whole kind of technical piece that's being developed currently that supports all of that.
And then the integration and data fabric, I think we call it out in the white paper. I think what's becoming apparent is what clients are realizing is actually it's data that provides the most value in terms of building and helping AI agents learn. It will be data and how much data we have access to make them more informative, make better decisions and learn from. So when we talk about integration and data fabric, that will be, I think clients will become a lot more protective about how data is managed within their own organizations. Sometimes I get asked the question about AI, which is, do you need to fix all your data first before you kind of start to build agents? I'm like, I view it kind of AI can play a role in both. I think when we look at people, we rely on humans to put in the risk register, fill in the data, write a good lesson, learn. I think there'll always be that risk. So how can you use AI agents to help them get the data right in the first place and help them improve how they capture data? But then when you have got that data, it's then how about it's our data, it's connected, how do we run machine learning on the top of that? It's not going to be, for the big organizations, it won't be, oh, we'll outsource that, we'll have our own kind of machine learning capability. But then how does the patterns or the events that machine learning detects actually pushes back up to an agent to do something with? And that's the other kind of aspect. So kind of intelligent agent, orchestration and logic, and then integration and data fabric are a kind of connected solution if you really want to kind of leverage the benefit of machine learning.
Yeah, I think as well from a business point of view, right, it's, if everyone has access to these AI agents, how do you differentiate yourself? I think this is the key one. It's your data that you're bringing to the AI that's going to allow you to differentiate yourself from everyone else who has access to these AI models.
Yeah. I mean, there is an interesting conversation when you're kind of a consulting organization and then you're working on behalf of the client about, I have this agent, it's connected to our data, so we know it's intelligent, but then, okay, we're going to then connect it to your data to inform it. It's kind of, that's probably how, I haven't really cracked that, but that's something for us to think about, is about how do your agents actually get connected and work on client data as well. The kind of knowledge and reasoning piece, I mean, a lot of what we call this is what we're building at the moment is source grounding. But essentially, how are we giving the agents context of your organization? So what are your standards? What are all the different policies? What are all the kind of sources of information that when we ask it questions, it doesn't just come back with, well, in this business landscape, you need to do X, Y, and Z. It's very much about how we train the models on, well, this is actually our policy, our standards. So when you're asking questions about how we should do something, it's not going off to just the natural kind of language model interface. We want it grounded in that it makes sense to us. It talks the way that we talk to our people, but it's very much grounded on our organizational context and knowledge. Otherwise, I think you've got a real risk that you're just diluted by the fact that you're just reliant on a model.
Yeah, I think as well with that, the way that kind of links back to all the other things we've just talked about is if a particular AI agent knows it needs a certain knowledge, but it doesn't have it, does it know where to get it?
Yeah. Because we were thinking, like, the process engine, if it's having to work about how to do something, then it probably wants to get sources of information that would help it make intelligent recommendations about ways of working. If an intelligent agent needs to assess something against a specific standard, like it might say that, look, we need to make sure that this deliverable meets the health or CDM standards. So it's going to be like, okay, well, I need to go over here. I've got the standards right now. I'm going to assess that against the document. Does it meet it? And what's my assessment of it? It's probably okay actually doing, like, AI is pretty good at the moment in terms of doing that assessment, but again, it's just about making sure you can ground agents so that they are intelligent about your organization. Final bit, and it's the human in the loop interface. I've kind of alluded to it before, which is I don't really want to disorientate people in ways of working. It's kind of, if I have to talk to 6 different agents to try and get something done, good example, who are we with? Doing something about change control. It's like, oh, I've got to do something in Procore. I've then got to go and have a conversation with CMAR, and then I've got to go back to this other system and do it. It's like, great. Are you telling me I've got to go and chat to them individually? Great. And it's that, for us, is actually, okay, a lot of thought needs to go into what is the primary interface that you want to give employees that's a natural interaction and dialogue. I might just be interacting with one interface that I use. It might be going in talking to multiple agents, but the interface is working out what, based on that question, which interface do I need to throw you to get the right response? But I'm certainly not going to come back with a recommendation that says, I can't handle that request. You need to switch screens and go and have a chat with this agent to get that role done. So for us, maybe Method Grid could become, we'll always try and design it and say, could it become a human in the loop interface? Potentially. I think for us, the reality is much more that clients will probably pick the primary one that's on our desktop, which would be either Copilot or Gemini, and it's about how you then make it a seamless interface of interacting with a way of working that you're just chatting to AI, but it's doing the job for you in the back-end systems through its logical connection.
Yeah, and I think as well, the way this relates to the, all this orchestration and these different agents is, and especially around ownership of the AI model, is I think it can work in two different ways, right? One is you're in the Method Grid interface, and you're doing things in Method Grid, you're building out a playbook, but you want to bring your AI model with you. So you're using Method Grid in Method Grid, but you've brought your AI model with you. The other way is you're not in Method Grid's interface, you're in Copilot or whatever it is, but you want that agent to be able to interact with Method Grid systems. There's kind of two, when we talk about this ownership of the AI model, there's two different ways we can think of that, right? One is you're in Method Grid, but you're using your AI. The other is you're talking to your AI, but it can use Method Grid, right?
So this kind of comes to the kind of conclusion. We sort of talk about that. That's in the white paper. So in the white paper, we kind of talk about all the things kind of need to think about and give you some examples about how things will talk to each other. But for us, this was what we kind of wanted to recognize. It's kind of, like I said, that strategic horizon for us, we kind of have to think about it now because it's going to take us probably about 12 months to get everything in place. But it's very much that it will be, you're likely to ask us that we want Method Grid connected to our language model, please. We want Method Grid to play a role in our agents. It's definitely, how do I get access to all the data in Method Grid and make it accessible within our data, because we want to combine it with different systems, different ways of working. It's definitely your knowledge. But fundamentally, the kind of main point for us was we view the kind of AI agent, it will probably be a key way in the future that you will differentiate your way in how you support clients and delivering projects. So it will definitely become kind of your intellectual property. It will be your agents, their intelligence connected to your data, driving efficiency, driving quality, driving better ways of working for employees. And that's why I think when we say it's kind of your IP, that's probably why you won't really want to let it be a haberdashery of different models, different ways of work, different systems that you really don't have any ownership and control of. And for us, it's making sure, like some clients are on the still on the feature, still on the kind of just exploring features. But as they evolve and as they go through that shift to be like, oh, actually, we want to now start building roles, we just want to make sure there's no blockers or barriers from our kind of system perspective. And very much, and we'll see later, it's probably, we ideally want to help you play an active role in building those type of agents as well in the future. Cool. I'll pause there because we're just open any questions that you might have about that. Rab.
For the orchestration layer, are you looking to build that in as an add-on, if you like, of Method Grid, sit with the process there, linking that together, but coming from an architectural viewpoint. Where do you see that orchestration layer happening in the physical world?
I think the orchestration layer will probably be client-owned in their infrastructure, but to Mark's point, we will need to provide infrastructure that allows you to interact. Like, so we'll have to put MCP server in place in our platform that you can then say, okay, let's connect. I need Method Grid to be connected, and it needs to talk to different agents. How do we enable that to happen? It won't be that we'll build infrastructure for that. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think that's exactly right. I mean, there might be a case if it goes the other way as well. When you're within Method Grid, maybe we're going to need to talk to one of your agents to get some information to do something Method Grid. But I think the orchestration primarily would be a client-owned thing. Yeah.
Any other questions, thoughts?
How would you deal with updates to, you mentioned that you wouldn't want it to, they're constantly updating, and then it will change the language tone or focus on something else. How do you handle that?
Again, I think that's, I mean, there's two different things, right? There's specific features where they're doing something very specific where it probably doesn't matter too much because it's doing one very specific thing. And, at that point, it's something that the method grid or the platform is going to own the AI. And if we upgrade it, as long as the feature still works, it doesn't matter too much to the user. But I think for the more kind of, moving towards the right of the thing we had at the start, I think that becomes something that, again, is client owned. It's, if you're using a specific LLM and you want to upgrade, it's then you test your systems against that before you upgrade it, and you make sure everyone in your organization is aware of what the implications of that change are going to be. Do they need to maybe slightly change how they talk to the LLM? Ideally not. You do your prompt engineering to try and make it as consistent and as seamless as you can as you upgrade it. But I think the feature is probably going to be a platform thing, but the as we move towards the right, it's more of a client-owned thing.
I mean, that's, Katie, that was the one thing we were thinking about is, hang on, if I have no control over the LMM and its decision about, so if we upgrade and we decide actually we're going to move to a different one for our platform, but you're connected to it and it's helping you make decisions, it'd be like, well, that one's been updated, and we're seeing loads of low performance. This agent now is absolutely useless. It just talks, it doesn't even respond, it's just completely quiet. And again, why has that happened? Oh, it's because 3 systems down the line, they've moved it onto a different model. So it's very much, it's like, well, if you think about implementing AI and you think about how teams are going to want to trust it, I think it was when DeepSeek came out, OpenAI changed its model, and then it used to start giving me loads of explanations about it. I was like, I don't want all this. I was like, get rid of that. But that behavior it frustrated me. And I was like, I think it's when you want people to adopt AI, and I think you've got to be really careful about, well, you want them to trust it, but as soon as they start to see it like not being performant or changing its response or its behavior, they're going to be like, hang on, because it's not, our kind of relationship with AI isn't really like a machine now. It's much more like we treat it like a human. Christ, we swear at Alexa when she just pops up on a call and won't be quiet. But so we definitely treat AI as a human. But again, if its behavior doesn't become consistent, that's going to help start to impact adoption on the human side of things. So it will be the kind of softer side as well.
Yeah, as well. I mean, from a technical point of view, within the dev team at Method Grid, this was a frustration we had every time we upgrade the agents. When you're building an element with an AI agent, the versions we were using initially, they'd get straight to the point and they just put your information in the element. Then when we upgraded it and we were testing it out, it would start with the whole preamble of like, sure, I can write that for you. It's like, we don't want that in the element. It's like, so we had to kind of do our prompt engineering and kind of change how our system spoke to the AI to, get it to respond in the way it was, of just getting to the point of, this is the information we want. Don't give us all the preamble format in this way. And the way formats response, varies between models or versions of models. And it's a frustration every time we upgrade.
So I mean, that's the kind of, any other questions, thoughts?
Not a question, but just a kind of reflection. So I think it's really interesting, the layers piece, which I've seen before, which is a good read to have. For me, there's a bit where, and I think it's the 5th or 6th layer, I'm not sure, it is then helping shape the regulatory regime, the governance regime, the supra to the organisation you're in, the regime that you're having to operate in. Thinking of Network Rail, but I'm sure other clients in the room would have a similar kind of containment of how they have to operate. And it's that interplay between, from the lessons learnt, the lessons to be learnt, and therefore some sort of output that then, dynamism is the word you use, but how does it shape that dynamic view of a regulatory world? Can it make the regulatory regime and that kind of legal background to how things are supposed to kind of perform and operate, how can it inform that and shape that and make that more dynamic?
Yeah.
We think of grit, we think of pace. Could pace have come along earlier in a scenario where AI-driven influence on the regime shapes its governance, and gets to be dynamic from both ends of the telescope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what I'm hoping.
Question or reflection?
No reflection. Yeah. I think what I'm hoping. I mean, like network rail is a really good example. I've got 15 standards to read for me to understand pace. Yet alone, the kind of maybe like 1,000 other standards that can be relevant in how I'm doing something. And the honest reality is, I don't think any human has got one individual has got a cat and hell's chance of being able to process that level of detail, synchronize it, and help them get access to the information they need when they're thinking about what's for me. AI really does present a much better way of giving people guidance on, by the way, you haven't got that covered and it's here and you need to link to it. And I think that one of the things about the knowledging thing is being able to evidence where it's sourced information from, because people will treat it like a human, so they'll trust it. Dynamically will just trust it because it behaves like a human, but it's going to have to evidence, or look, by the way, this is why I'm pushing this recommendation, because it comes from X, Y, and Z. It's not that something I've just made up. It's kind of, they will need that kind of traceability and decisioning to help be with compliant behavior. So I think it is a big push to be dust the standards off the shelf and make them kind of more dynamic into ways of working. But you're going to have to find a way of how you communicate that with people in context of where they are in the process.
And I guess, sorry, just to mainly on the rail bit, but other clients in the room, please speak up with your industries and sectors. For NR, it's that interface and interplay with the ORR, the Office of Rail and Road, the regulator. So again, their take or the regulatory regime's take on how it should want to have it probably has a strategy around this, right? I haven't read it, but how it then has its end of that telescope. So it should be ingesting. Is that the word? That's the buzzword, right? Ingesting content out of organisations that have had to operate in their regulatory regime. It should make them more dynamic and more agile for all the flavours of government we have in our...
Yeah. No, I think it's a really interesting point of, you have the regulations flowing down to the project. How do we get the project data to flow back up to the regulations? Exactly, yeah. Yeah, no, it's a great point.
Cool. That kind of concludes the talk, but look, very much that some of you may just be on the kind of feature exploring it, but we naturally think over time you're going to kind of evolve and be like, actually, we want to kind of build roles. And for us, it was just making sure that we can support you on that journey and don't put any barriers that would stop it. It's about how we facilitate you on that journey.
Yeah. So it's the very last point. I think there's two things about it. One is, as we're building Method Grid, we're building it in such a way to support this in the future. But also, secondly, we're thinking about how we can support you as organisations to get to that point yourselves.
Right, lovely. Thank you very much.